Justin, it says we can broadcast for up to 8 hours. Do you want to go ahead and do the full 8 since Kiki's not here?
As well.
Chat room, let us know when you can see us and hear us, and we will get this party started. Buffering. That's not good.
Hot Rod always buffers. Hot Rod in the chat room.
Everything in his house is very shiny. It's so well buffed.
He's constantly buffering things.
5x5. Woo! Okay. How do I do a show? Let's look. Okay.
Wait, aren't we already?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 683, recorded on Wednesday, August 15th, 2018. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the laboratory. Hi, everybody. I'm Blair Bazdarich. Dr. Kiki's not with us today, but she's with us in spirit. We will fill your head with all sorts of amazing science today, including marital disputes, magnetic fish, and the drunchies. But first...
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. What do we have here? One wonderful planet. That's what we've got here, folks. And while there are plenty of things that we could be complaining about, the planet really isn't one of them. It's just great. What's so great about it, you ask? Why, you are what is so great about this planet. You are on the planet, and it wouldn't be the same without you. You with the inquisitive mind, you with the taste for sciencey things, you with your big brain and bottomless appetite for knowledge. Why, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't even be here right now. And if we weren't here right now, then you wouldn't be about to enjoy another episode of This Week in Science. Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Blair.
Good science to you, Justin. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of This Week in Science. Dr. Kiki is in New York City, and so she cannot make it to be with us today for a bunch of reasons. 3 hours ahead, crowded hotel room, all sorts of things. But we are still here to bring you the science. I think we have a great show ahead looking at our stories on the docket. I have stories about egg swaps, smelly wings, and Wi-Fi security. What do you have, Justin?
I've got magnetic fish, persistent mummies, why men are so darn violent, and there's one more. Oh, and why we walk on two legs, and how the world would be different if we didn't.
So why we fight and why we stand on two legs. This will be a very enlightening show. Well, before we jump in, I wanted to remind everyone that you can subscribe to TWIS, all the places that you find podcasts. That's iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spreaker, TuneIn, etc. You can also find us on YouTube if you like looking at our beautiful faces, and Facebook by searching for This Week in Science. Or just go to twis.org and you could find us some other way. But now it's time for some science, which I'm going to start with talking about marital disputes. Marital disputes. Do you think they're good for you, Justin?
Well, now, my understanding about marriage is that half of them end in divorce, but that the other half end in death. So I'm kind of torn. I'm not really sure which is the better outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So this study wanted to look at marital disputes and kind of the impact on the health of those involved with the marital disputes. And of course, I hit a button and all of my highlights and notes just disappeared. So I'm winging it a little bit in this very dense study, but it's from Ohio State. And they wanted to look at how marital disputes affect specifically people's guts and people's immune health. So they were looking at something called leaky gut syndrome. Doesn't that sound lovely? So with leaky gut syndrome, the structures that are usually really good at keeping the gunk in or out is how they put it. The partially digested food, bacteria, other products. With leaky gut, the structures that keep those things in degrade and the barrier becomes less effective. Bacteria in the blood driving up inflammation contributes to poor mental health, and then it kind of creates this circling loop of unhealthiness. So what they did in this study is they took participants from 24 to 61 years old. They all had to have been married at least 3 years. And all these couples were also part of another study. Ohio State, I guess, really likes looking at marital kind of dynamics. They also wanted to look at how the interactions between marital hostility lead to depression and obesity, which probably you could guess. But so they took these people and they did some interviews with them. It was 43 married couples. They surveyed them about their relationship and then encouraged them to discuss and try to resolve a conflict likely to provoke a strong disagreement. The examples that they give are money or in-laws. So they left these couples alone. They videotaped them for 20 minutes while they fought, and they watched how they fought. They categorized verbal and nonverbal fighting behaviors, and they wanted to focus in particular on ones that they deemed hostile, things like dramatic eye rolls or criticizing one another in an advanced way. And they wanted to see how this, what they call hallmark of bad marriages, lead to other adverse physiological changes. They compared blood drawn pre-fight to blood drawn post-fight. And they found that men and women who demonstrated more hostile behaviors during the observed discussions had higher levels of a biomarker for leaky gut, which was LPS binding protein, than their mellower peers. Evidence of leaky gut was greater in study participants who had particularly hostile interactions with their spouse and a history of depression or another mood disorder as well. So previous studies, also from Ohio State, have drawn correlations between poor marriages and just general health woes, but this is particularly looking at leaky gut.
Okay, so here's the question.
Yeah.
What comes first?
So their indication here, because they took the pre and post blood draws, is that the protein, the biomarker that they were looking at, was not present before the fight and was present after the fight. So what they're saying is this is a form of stress, which is exactly what I would have guessed just by reading this headline of this story, is that when your partner is your primary support in life, and a troubled marriage, as they put it, causes what should be your primary support to become your primary stressor. We know that stress basically destroys a body. We know that. We've talked about it a bunch on the show. So you can see how this particular kind of stress could mess up all parts of your body. In particular, they were looking at the leaky gut.
So I totally believe that there are people who can be toxic to each other in some way, right?
Yes.
However,
figuratively and literally, it would appear.
Right. But what I'm curious about though, in this is because now we understand so much about how the gut controls our mood and behaviors, and if and you have a great group here, which is a couple who likely share a diet. Yeah. And if this diet has caused stress to their digestive system to the point where an elevation of stress leads quickly to an inflammation, which then causes their moods to change negatively quickly, I don't know that it's necessarily that clear which is coming first here. It could be.
So you're saying that biomarker spikes, which causes them to start fighting.
Right. So if you've got a healthy microbiome, right? I'm just pretending, speculating, but this is like also within a correlative of this. If your microbiome isn't healthy, then the stress elevation could cause an inflammation. Whereas I don't know. The thing I would wonder is if a couple has a very healthy microbiome, and do they get these same stress markers show up, and do they just deal with them? And because they've dealt with them, their arguments maybe aren't so stressful because they're not having this mood altering affect from their gut that's then contributing.
So that's possible. It seems like a lot of their research they did on other proteins, looking at inflammation, looking at the cause of inflammation, kind of following it back to the source. The conclusion that they are drawing is that it is the hostility that spikes this biomarker. So looking at that particular kind of basis of the results of this study, they wanted to see hostile behaviors effect on potentially problematic biomarker activity in the bloodstream in relation to a history of depression. And they also found that a history of depression meant that the hostile behaviors were followed by a spike easier. So again, I could see how that could potentially go the other way. I guess we would have to do before, during, and after. I don't know how you would kind of parse those things out. But what I thought was really interesting about this study was that they say that this could help identify who might need treatment for leaky gut and how to treat it and all this kind of stuff. They say lifestyle changes that could contribute to decreased risk of gut-related inflammation include diets and lean proteins, healthy fats, fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Probiotics might also be useful.
As well as divorce.
So that's what I think is very interesting, is the entire length of this study, they kept talking about troublesome relationships and hostile behavior and all this kind of stuff. And then at the end, when they're talking about what to do about it, they're talking about the diet and not the source of the hostility.
All right. So Dr. Justin, not a real doctor, but a psychiatry doctor, not a real psychiatry doctor.
Right.
If you look back at the last,
if you will,
2 months, 6 months, year and a half, 5 years of your situation with your significant, and can source tremendous stress from those interactions, there are other people.
Yeah, other people exist on the planet. That's true.
There are other people, and this is not should not be considered as advice that has not been tested. This is advice that has been tested to the point where I think that most people who are in happy, healthy, loving relationships who had other relationships that weren't previous look back at those and go, oh, good gosh. Oh, yeah. I'm so glad I moved on. And it's amazing that I didn't sooner, or that I even got involved with that. Now that I know that there's another world that can be lived in. So don't be afraid, people.
I would say, we talk a lot on the show about taking care of yourself, taking care of your diet, taking care of your microbiome, taking care of your body by not sitting too long, all this kind of stuff that we talk about. Part of taking care of yourself is taking care of the social grouping that you put yourself in. And so if one is doing you harm, that's something to consider for sure. But yeah. So the hostile relationship could be giving you a leaky gut. Justin, do you have some magnetic fish to talk about?
Yes. Scientists have discovered a magnetic fish. Finally, a market for Captain Justin's, not a real captain, magnetic fishing lures. Originally developed to catch steelhead trout, but it turns out steel is not magnetic. I didn't know this.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not really what's going on. This is Michigan State University scientists have discovered a navigational gene in glass catfish called the electromagnetic perceptive gene, EPG for short, that responds to certain magnetic waves. So these fish, in the little video that was supplied with this research. So shows fish in aquarium just sort of swimming around, minding their business. They turn on a electric field or a magnetic field, and suddenly the fish all move to one side of the aquarium. Like they can totally sense it. Something's changed. They move, and then they turn it off, and the fish go back to swimming around. So they've actually already taken and developed a way to use this to control movement in mice. Implications of the study, which is published in the journal Scientific Reports, they say have the potential to revolutionize treatments in humans, though for those who suffer tremors related to Parkinson's. Oh, you've got the screen share. Yes. Play this. This is for those of you without video enabled currently. Some fish. They
really just all go straight there
right away. They head to either towards it or away from it. I can't really tell where they're emanating the field from. I think they're moving away from it in this. And then as soon as they turn it off, we're free to swim around. Yeah. So they're really, I mean, this is an amazing thing. Fish with magnetic navigational skills alone is really kind of a cool thing to learn. But yeah, they say that this could be used to help treat those who are suffering the tremors of Parkinson's.
Really?
Seizures associated with epilepsy. So this is quotey voice of Galit Peled, who's a medical bioengineer professor, Michigan State University Institute for Quantitative Health Science and Engineering. We've found a non-invasive way to activate this gene once injected in the brain cells of mice and regulate movement in their limbs. It could work similarly in humans. So the idea being a person suffering Parkinson's disease tremors could have the gene injected into a specific location or subset of cells within their brain. A magnet that emits electromagnetic waves hidden subtly within an eyeglass frame, say, could then activate the gene to help control, if not even stop completely, these tremors. Technology is getting better and better every year, so this magnet could be built into anything, Peled says. So currently, deep brain stimulation treatments have been found to be somewhat effective for Parkinson's patients. However, it's pretty invasive. This is drilling a hole through the skull and planting electrodes into the brain. There is neural damage that comes along with such a drastic treatment. So if you could treat cells with this gene. So he also has a co-author in this study who is Asif Gilad, who's a professor of biomedical engineering and radiology. He's working on stem cells. Quotey voice. Stem cells are very good carriers of genes. So if someone has Parkinson's, we can introduce these stem cells into the brain as a therapy. This type of treatment could not only help the brain, but could work in other parts of the body too, says Gilad, like the heart. It helped those with heart issues. So yeah, I mean, our bodies are biomechanical things that run with a lot of electricity. This sounds like it could affect a lot of stuff. Researchers said their next steps to figure out what makes this electromagnetic perceptive gene so sensitive to magnetic waves. The mechanism is currently still unknown. That is the next step, is figuring out the mechanism and refining treatments for this.
You know what I'm wondering is if in all of the studies we've read about pigeons and how they navigate, if they've ever tried to attract or repel a pigeon with a magnet. Because a big part of the conversation has been, oh, it's electromagnetic fields. Oh, it's not. Oh, it is. Oh, it isn't. And it's I just wonder, see, if it's showing up in fish, then that could be something that has existed in the evolutionary tree of life since fish. It's pretty interesting.
So it's at least in this fish. I don't know that they found this in any other fish.
Right.
But this is this glass catfish, which is something I've never heard of before. I guess it's an aquarium type fish too. Which
right.
Means
well, catfish are a polyphyletic group. So a catfish isn't like a real distinction of what kind of fish it is. Usually just a catfish means that it's a bottom dweller that has whiskers.
Right. And so I don't know that this is a bottom dweller, but it definitely has the whiskers, right? So it could just be, you're saying it could just be morphology assignment and not
It is, yeah.
like a
Catfish
fancy
is not like a real
Okay. So
type
yeah.
of fish.
So there's that aspect to it too. You just mentioned the pigeon thing. One of the things I've always wondered, like Tesla was massively obsessed with pigeons. Rumor has it he wanted to marry one. Possibly this could have also been. Possibly though, he fed them in Bryant Park all the time, but possibly it could have been that he was had friends he would communicate with, encoded messages with pigeons. So that might have been why he was so interested in pigeons. But it does occur to me too, like, what if he actually accidentally ran your experiment, and in one of his electromagnetic studies, whole bunch of pigeons showed up, and he's like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. I can command the legion of pigeons now. I don't.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, let's just say that happened, because I want that to be true.
All came about. My next story. They did some extensive tests on a prehistoric mummy. This is a mummy that's been sitting in a museum in Turin, which I believe is in Egypt. It's been in this museum though since 1901, untouched. No conservation treatments have been done. No real analysis has been done. And part of it too is like people weren't too curious about this mummy because it was assumed that this mummy was mummified by just sort of the hot, dry desert sands. It's very ancient mummy, 3700 to 3500 BC, which if math is working, it's like almost, 5,500, almost 6,000 years old, right? Really ancient mummy. And, embalming wasn't really thought to have taken place until about 1,500 years later than the age of this mummy. So no real need to look until somebody decided, hey, why haven't we looked? So they did. Scientists led by the University of York and Makerere uncovered evidence that the mummy had in fact undergone an embalming process. So right there, they've pushed back by 1,500 years the previously accepted date of mummification in Egypt. But what I find insanely interesting about this is that the embalming process, there was plant oil, heated conifer resins, and aromatic plant extract, plant gum, sugar mixed together and used on the mummy wrap to make it a preserved and a preservative as well. The recipe that they used contained antibacterial agents that were used in similar proportions to those employed by Egyptian embalmers 2,500 years later.
So the recipe persisted.
Yeah, and that's what to me is like really amazing, right? I mean, so much of human knowledge can disappear when if it's not properly handed down from one generation to the next. And we have such an ability to maintain and preserve knowledge today that we sort of take it for granted that stuff was written down, therefore we never lose it, right? And we've been doing this very well for a couple hundred years, right? Even when we're looking at medieval texts, we have to find somebody who wrote something down somewhere so that we can even glean something about what might have happened at the time. And hopefully enough people did it so that we have these intersecting accounts that we can kind of grasp even history. But to have something passed down pretty much intact, a tradition followed by a people for thousands of years, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. And that, I think that might impact what our thoughts on why people did the practice and what the significance was and all that kind of stuff. That might impact that as well, because we don't know if that persisted quite to the level that this recipe did, but maybe it did. We don't know.
Well, no, that's the thing too. Yeah, that's a great point though. That's also a tradition that persisted for 2,500 years, right?
Yeah.
And
so were they doing it for the same reasons?
Right.
Yeah.
Like did it so if the recipe and the tradition persisted,
the kind of the culture, right?
did that culture largely persist? Did everything and everything else that comes along with it? And we have okay, so part of it you would have to assume, what are traditions that persist like this? Well, really, you got to look at religion. Religion persists for thousands of years
because of oral tradition, right? It's kind of the way that they talk about it, and
but also written. I mean, this is without writing. The Egyptians were not without writing, but their books were really heavy.
Yeah, it brought the whole idea of a board book to a whole new level, right?
But
a tablet book
for an ancient society, because I picture, and possibly based on this incorrectly, ancient civilizations booming and busting, of gaining knowledge and losing it, or that knowledge thing goes off and becomes part of a different culture and is no longer even connected to the original.
But something persisted. Yeah,
thousands of years. I don't think that there's anything within our current modern culture today that will be here 2,500 years from now.
Yeah, probably not.
It's very hard to.
Well, some plastics for sure.
It's hard to think of a whole lot of culture that can have a half-life like that.
Yeah, you don't think we'll be finding Wi-Fi routers in 2,500 years out?
I think it's more along the lines, I don't know, of a meme that persists for 25 years. Oh yes, that meme. We know it well.
Yes. Well, Wi-Fi routers.
Oh wait, sorry.
That brings me to my next story. I was trying to do this seamless. It's all right. It's fine. The moment's over. So Wi-Fi, from the very old tradition to the cutting edge, Wi-Fi might bring us a brand new breakthrough in keeping us safe in big, crowded public spaces. So Wi-Fi, everybody has it. If you go to a sports event or a museum, a lot of the time you'll see, hop on our Wi-Fi, share things on social media, right? So a new study from Rutgers University and New Brunswick, the researchers were looking at the capacity to use Wi-Fi as a security detection system. So they looked at using wireless signals in public places, and they could take existing Wi-Fi networks, add 2 or 3 antennas and a device, and with that, they could analyze and penetrate through bags and analyze the objects inside. So, yes. So this means they're going into bags made of pretty much any material. They can identify the dimensions of metal objects. They can identify them depending on the shape. They can definitely identify most weapons, aluminum cans, laptops, batteries, bombs. And they could also estimate the volume of liquids like water, acid, alcohol, other chemicals that are corrosive or explosives. These are all things that they could identify. So they did an experiment with 15 types of objects and 6 types of bags, and their detection accuracy it was 99% for dangerous objects, 98% for metal, and 95% for liquid. For typical backpacks, the accuracy rate exceeded 95% and drops to about 90% when objects inside bags are wrapped, which I wonder, I don't think this is published. I looked around a little bit. I wonder what the accuracy rate if you think about human error of the manpower and human power of checkpoints How accurate are those?
Well, but here's the thing I would need to know.
Mm-hmm.
When I say 99% accurate,
Mm-hmm.
does that just mean that 1 out of 100 times it missed it?
Yes.
It doesn't mean that 1 out of 100 times it said gun and it wasn't a gun. No, I mean,
Good question.
The false
It's
positive.
probably both. So it's probably any false detection of or lack of detection of a dangerous object.
So the false positive in this technology is really important because if 10,000 people go through an airport terminal and none of them have a gun, it'll say 100 of them do.
That's not how statistics work.
That's not good.
Goodness.
That's really tough. Shut it down. Roller, somebody's got a gun. Oh my God. And it turns out that happens 100 times a day.
Hold on.
Even though no guns came through.
That's not how statistics works.
That is exactly how.
In this
if it's
study,
a false positive, that's what I need to know what the false positive is of these.
So you are assuming that they ran a study where they could extrapolate that. But what you're assuming is that this 15 trial or 15 type of objects, 6 types of bags in hundreds of runs is something that you could extrapolate to where there's nothing that's bad and you're extrapolating that. So that's, I think you're misinterpreting this data.
No,
here.
I'm not correctly interpreting it either. Don't get me wrong. I'm neither correctly nor incorrectly interpreting the data. I'm questioning though whether or not there is a false positive associated with it. Because if it's 99% accurate, is it just missing 1 out of 100, which is a fantastic benefit and boon to mankind. If this thing can detect a bomb with 99% accuracy or a gun or whatever, a weapon of some sort, then that's just fantastic. And it's great. And it's huge improvement. But if there's a false positive, if the reason it's not 100 is because it did identify a weapon when there wasn't one, then this is a curse upon humanity.
So unless you're thinking about it this way, Justin, that people who aren't carrying anything and are not identified don't go through extra security. People who are identified as potentially having something go through extra security. That's still going to be less humans and less time and less lines of security detection. So that's still going to speed up the process. That's a good point. Yes. So if everybody's just walking through these doors and, they walk through this archway and you go into this extra line, you go into this extra line. I'm assuming that's what would happen here because somebody's not going to get tackled and shackled because of a Wi-Fi scanner.
Wow.
If you think about it, all these places where they're talking about using these, you already go through a metal detector, a pat down, somebody looks through your bag, whatever it is. Right. So this is
right with I think
streamline that process.
Right, but I think they're approaching everybody with the trust but verify kind of a scenario. But my thing is people get shot for reaching for their wallets to show ID in this country. If you have something that already says, they're armed or they could be armed, it looks like a gun. And here's the thing.
Well, think about what happens, Justin, when you go through TSA and somebody sees something on the bag scanner where they're like, uh-oh, that looks weird. They pull you to the side, they open up your bag. That's all this would be. They're going to pull you to the side, they're going to open up your bag.
Except for the fact that they're going to know that 99 times in a row they found a gun when this thing went off, right? Why does somebody have a gun? So it's going to escalate the response because 99% of the time we know it's a gun. Chances that it's not a gun is only 1%, right? But that's going to happen in a 10,000 person turnstile 100 times. But if they're used to assuming that it's a gun, it's going to create that. I don't know. it's going to be interesting to see if this actually is something that they can employ.
So what I'm seeing is,
and I don't know that there's a false positive for this either. I'm just speculating this out.
The system was looking at whether the Wi-Fi methods could effectively identify objects made of dangerous material. When half the objects and only one bag are chosen for training, the detection rate for all dangerous materials is still over 89%. Yeah, I'm having trouble identifying.
So, and it could be that it never gets triggered with a false reading. Okay, possible. But if so, and here's the other playing on things with statistics. The false positive could be much higher than 1% if that was a thing that was left out, because it could find 99% of the time when there's an actual gun there, but might also trigger 10% of the time when there isn't. Like that's also that can also happen. Right?
So it's not saying, the system won't say, I see a gun over there. The system says, I see a cylindrical metal object holding water, or I see a cylindrical metal object holding oil, or I see a barrel-shaped object with air, or whatever it is. So yeah, I don't know.
That raises, that to me raises the chance that there's probably a large false positive in there that's not what they're talking about, because they're looking just at the fact that it can detect, which is awesome and amazing. It's totally incredible. But without knowing how many times, so
that's the idea here, right? Is that they can figure out what material it's made out of and what the object contains.
Right. So a metal, what do they call the thing? Metal humidor thing that you put a cigar in, right? One of those little collapsible. That could come across as a barrel-shaped metal object. So if that's part of the 99%, then anything that's a barrel-shaped thing that's coming through, they're doing.
Yeah, which is just like, when in the 1990s my dad went through TSA with a lighter shaped like a gun, he got pulled to one side, didn't he? But it happens, and so he wasn't tackled. It's part of the idea is, when you're going into these situations, a human has to see it before something, is initiated. But anyway, this is all preliminary. All of this is preliminary. It's just the technology exists. It can plug into existing Wi-Fi networks. So it's something that could potentially help us be safer.
In 99, I went through a bunch of airports with a Gerber, like knife with the scissors and the pliers and one of those things on my belt. I totally had thought I intended to put it in the bag, but I just forgot, and nobody cared.
Yeah, I bet.
Who cares? What do you do with that?
Well, it helps you're white males too. So it's
no. This is pre 9/11. People really, they weren't like. All
right. Well, anyway, if you just tuned in, you're listening to This Week in Science, and do you know what time it is, Justin?
It's either time for Blair's Animal Corner with Blair or Blair's Animal Corner with Blair.
Both correct.
Stubbs are creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels.
What have you got, Blair?
I have. Okay. Trying to do too many things with too many hands at once. I have a story about cuckoos. We've talked about these a bunch on the show. What are they famous for, Justin? Do you remember?
The cuckoos, it's the parasite breeder?
Yes, they're the brood parasites. So they are the ones who are like, raising your own kids is for chumps. And so they lay their eggs in other birds' nests, and those birds raise the chicks like their own, even though the eggs often are different colors, even though the babies, when they come out, look nothing like the other babies. Whatever. I guess they pick kind of patsy birds or something. I don't know. Anyway, so there's a bunch of stuff about cuckoos that we've talked about on the show in relation to how this happens, how they learn to do it, if it's ingrained in their genetics, all this kind of stuff. Well, the plot thickens. This is an international collaborative study with researchers from the University of Hertfordshire in the UK, and they worked with academics from Russia and Ukraine to study 173 oriental cuckoo eggs. This is one of the largest studies of its kind. They wanted to look at the fact that oriental cuckoos parasitize small warblers, and those nests are varied among the different types of warblers that they parasitize. So these oriental cuckoos, some of them will parasitize the Arctic warbler, some of them the common chiffchaff, some of them the yellow-browed warbler, and some of them the Pallas leaf warbler. And they wanted to see if there was a difference in how they parasitized each of these nests. In addition to field data, they also studied oriental cuckoo and host eggs from collections. So what's interesting is warbler eggs are small, much smaller than cuckoo eggs. So aside from the fact that we've kind of given up on the fact that warblers might just not know what's up, there's something else going on here, because it would be very easy for them to just look at it and go, that egg's way bigger, get out of here. And so they wanted to see this evolutionary adaptation. This study suggests that there is a match between cuckoo eggs and host egg breadth. So this is an evolutionary response to host rejection behavior, so that the host is likely to keep an egg that has a similar, let's say, diameter to the rest of the eggs in the clutch. So when they look down at the eggs, they all look kind of similar. So they found in the study the egg's breadth matched the host's eggs well, because the cuckoo's eggs, if they stick out, they're likely to be kicked out. But their egg length was very variable. So you kind of picture this like very skinny long egg. And the egg length was determined by the demand to produce eggs larger than the host, and that the longest eggs were produced by cuckoos parasitizing the smallest host, with only female feeding the young. So not just that since it was skinnier, it had to be longer. Additionally, because only females were feeding the young, they had to have a bigger yolk sac inside the egg to kind of seed the growth of this baby, because they weren't going to be fed as well. These cuckoos don't want to raise their babies so bad. They're going to drop them off in a warbler's nest where only one parent cares for the babies, and they don't give as good of care as other warblers. They're still like, nah, I want to go out. So they have these much thinner, longer eggs to give a larger space to yolk. So now the question that I have is, which came first? And I will avoid the obvious joke here and ask, which came first? Was it did the cuckoos kind of break off into kind of sects or groups that parasitize different types of birds, and then those particular kind of family trees and branches or geographic locations or whatever it is mostly laid eggs that fit well with this particular warbler or other species? Or do they somehow, when hanging out in a particular area, just lay that egg? So as a cuckoo that was passed down from generation to generation to generation by parasitizing Arctic warbler nests, do I now, as the default, lay eggs that are similar in breadth to Arctic warblers? Or is it, I don't know, the fact that I'm in that area and I want to lay in that nest, that somehow there's something else going on internally? It sounds like it's probably genetic, and it's probably based on
long-term selection stuff.
Yeah, it does sound that way, but it doesn't seem like they did that part of this study yet. So that would be something to see next.
But yeah, so
you'd have to kind of look at the genetics of each of these groups.
Yeah, and I mean, so the sort of evolutionary selection thing would be imagining cuckoos just dropping eggs in any nest they came across.
Yeah, exactly.
Those eggs getting pushed out in all but some, and that those that were that some went on to be the next generations of cuckoos. And of course, their eggs are going to be like their egg that they were born in, because that's the one that their parents laid, and so they have the genes to produce this kind of an egg. And
yeah, but then how do they know to only parasitize that type of nest? So that has to be a learned or a locked-in genetic behavior.
Right. So then at some point it becomes, well, no, here it is. Here it is. Who's laying the eggs? It's cuckoos that were raised by warblers.
Mm-hmm.
Where do they go to find home when they want to lay their egg? A warbler nest. That's the only kind of nest I knew when I grew up.
So that would be the thing to do, right? Take a cuckoo out of the wild, see if they lay eggs when left to their own devices that are consistent with warblers. See if they go to the warbler nest. See if it's locale, if it's the host bird that's hanging out there. What is it that's the trigger to them? I'd be very interested to hear that. But I don't know.
You can always take a cuckoo out of the wild, Blair, but you can't take the wild out of a cuckoo.
There you go. So from vertebrates that fly to invertebrates that fly, I want to talk about fruit fly wings. Fruit fly wings are pretty special. Invertebrate kind of insect wings in general are pretty special. We've talked on the show about antimicrobial qualities of a lot of wings and abilities to reduce drag and all these sorts of specialized things. Well, the latest out of Ohio State University find that wings might also help fruit flies smell. Yes. So scientists have long wondered about the balance between an insect's need for flight and odor-based navigation. How are they figuring out where they're going while they're flying? They're moving so quickly. So I love the way this study started. It actually started with two skeptical researchers out of Ohio State. Both of them had heard this dual purpose hypothesis for the wings, and they were like, this can't be true. So Kai Zhao, the olfaction and bioengineering expert, said this didn't make sense. He says, people have thought the wings might contribute to scent detection, but the antenna, the bug's primary scent trackers, are perched on top of its head, well in front of the wings. Imagine a speedboat skimming across a calm lake. Its bow is always hitting the calm water ahead of the wake, and the turbulence generated by the propeller. Why wouldn't the antenna be on the tail, catching all the scents downwind? Okay, so that's why he's like, this can't be true. The co-author, Chengyu Li's mechanical engineering background led him to think that wings were made for speed and agility and nothing else. Quote, I previously worked on projects looking at aerodynamics that could be applied to drones. For researchers doing this kind of work, we assume that nature is the best designer, that the wing is primarily designed for flight. Well, you can see the writing on the wall here. Things turned out differently than they anticipated. They used a computer simulation of fruit fly in flight, encountering a plume of scent, and they started to tweak things. They found, first of all, just to look at the computer simulation by itself, the wings weren't just going up and down, they were doing kind of an oscillating scooping motion, and it looked like they were actually scooping scent up towards their antenna. So the insect wings...
Is that a thing? What's it? It's wafting it towards yourself? Is that
kind of wafting, absolutely. So this is part of a, quote, odor scoop. And then in the computer simulation, they removed part of the wing, which represents about 20% of its structure, but is only responsible for 5% of lift. So why would you have this a fifth of your wing that is not about flight? And they found that by removing this 20%, it actually improved efficiency of flight, but it made the computer simulated insect's wings much less successful at redirecting sense to the antenna. So they found the scoop.
Yeah.
So that led researchers to speculate. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, because you could be a better, more efficient flyer, but not have any idea where it would be interesting to go. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that means the wings most likely are about fast transport and detection of odors in the atmosphere. Yes. So this is interesting also because if you remember, that second researcher was all about making drones based on insect flight, which means, one, that they might actually be able to use this information to design drones that, quote unquote, smell threats, that follow chemical signals. But what I was thinking of, too, was that they may have been designing drones wrong that are just about flying well. If they were following insects' wings, they might have to look back at that.
Yeah, okay. That's a little curious. I've never looked at this, but I don't see on the surface a tremendous amount of similarity between insect wings and how a drone flies. But I'm sure there's intricacies of lift around the wing that I don't have.
Yeah, well, there you have it. There's the animal corner. So we are going to take a quick break. Stay tuned for more This Week in Science coming up next.
You heard with more than intuition. The line of reason shows the way.
Did you know that This Week in Science has merchandise you might enjoy? If you go to twis.org, I'm going to see if I can screen share for you right now. We go. If you go to twis.org, you can click on the Zazzle store link. And it's loading. And you'll be able to find all sorts of amazing merchandise with TWIS branding. So recently, actually, we had a listener tell us that they worked in a school and they had to wear polos for work. And so we actually made this polo at their request, which also means, by the way Zazzle works is pretty cool. If there's something that you really want a TWIS logo on, if you really want some of the Blair's Animal Corner calendar images on something, all you have to do is ask, and chances are I can put it in there. So you can tweet me at Blair's Menagerie, or you can email me, blairbaz@twis.org, and you can ask me, I'd really like that octopus on a mug. And I can go ahead and I can do that for you and put it in the Zazzle store. And all of that you buy in Zazzle, some of the proceeds do go to the show, which is great. So check that out. Go to twis.org, click on the Zazzle store link in the menu bar, and start purchasing your gifts. TWIS is also supported by listeners like you. Your donations pay for hosting, bandwidth, contractors we need to hire, fun things we try to do for the show. When we travel for live shows, it helps out with that as well. We appreciate any amount, $2, $5, $10, $100. You make this show possible. We certainly could accept donations in a bunch of different ways. So we have our PayPal donation buttons on the page on twis.org. You'll see it on pretty much every single show page, as well as a few other pages that you go to. You'll see these buttons for the PayPal donations. You can do that as a one-time donation or a recurring donation. You can also go to Patreon. Go to patreon.com/thisweekinscience. And that's kind of like a Kickstarter. So there's a bunch of different throwbacks that you can get for different pledging amounts. So we have our shout out pledge, we have our Blair's art pledge. So art to our contributors at that level. Actually, we've had some people who've been doing it at that level since we started our Patreon. I think Identity 4 in the chat room has gotten 2 or 3 of my pieces of art, and we really appreciate his support. You can keep getting those. But check that out and see if any of those levels work for you, if you'd like any of those kickbacks. Otherwise, if you just want to send us a PayPal donation, that's also great. If you can't afford a donation, we can always use your help just getting more people to listen to TWIS and watch TWIS. You can use your social networks in real life and online for science and to tell people to tune in to This Week in Science. If you listen to us on iTunes, you can help by posting a review, and you can give thumbs up on recent reviews that you think were helpful. We want those reviews up front to be the more recent ones. That would be great. And if each of you just tell a few of your friends to listen to This Week in Science, tell them when you hear an interview you think they might enjoy, tag them on social media, steal their phone from them and subscribe, whatever it is. We thank you for your support in every way that you do, even just by being here with us. We could not and would not do it without you.
Methods and hypotheses and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see.
And we're back with more This Week in Science.
Yes, and do you know what time it is, Justin?
You keep asking me this. I need to get a watch.
You need to get a watch. It's time for This Week in What Has Science Done For Me Lately? That's right. So, especially now, it's really important that we put a spotlight on science, and we want to hear from all of you what science has done for you lately. So this week's comes from Captain Damage. See him on Twitter all the time. He says, I wrote this kind of quick. Don't know if it's coherent enough to read on TWIS. Well, guess what? It definitely was. Captain Damage says, you get a lot of what has science done for me stories about modern medicine saving someone's life. While I do have a story like that, with a twist that my life was saved from complications following an earlier procedure to save my life, that's not what I want to talk about. I have been a science enthusiast since I was a child. I remember viewing Saturn through a neighbor's telescope when I was 5 years old. Among my favorite toys were a Gilbert chemistry set I used to destroy test tubes, and a microscope I used to look at pond water. Though I did not pursue a STEM career, I have remained a fan of science as an adult. I read about particle physics for fun. I check science news websites daily, watch science and nature videos, and listen to podcasts like TWIS. For work, I make high-end musical instruments, specifically flutes made mostly of silver and gold. Though the basic acoustic science of how a flute makes sound was worked out a couple centuries ago, there's an endless variety of alloys and materials to try, different construction techniques and tools, small tweaks, and even major modifications we can make to the instruments, each contributing some subtle or not so subtle quality to their sound. A science-inspired approach to carefully testing and evaluating all of these possible variables helps me in understanding how to make the best instruments possible and where to look to improve them even further. I simply would not see the world the same way without my love for science and respect for the scientific method. What science has done for me lately, as it has done for me all my life, is it has made me me. Oh yeah, and it also saved me from appendicitis and peritonitis a few years ago. So that's a good add-on also.
Yeah.
Thank you, Captain Damage.
Captain Damage. Actually, that's amazing. It brought back a flood of memories for me because I did have a chemistry set that my great uncle, or I think that's what it is. He great uncle, my grandmother's brother, granduncle.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Which my mother immediately confiscated because of all the warning labels on the thing.
Oh, that's
I
great.
never got to play with it, but replaced it with a microscope. And we had a koi pond in the backyard. And the first thing I did was as suggested by my mother, was collect some water and look at it under the microscope. And the world of moving, living creatures within that pond was my first real like aha moment as a kid with science, because it was something I collected and I looked and I worked the microscope and I could see this and this existed and nobody else could see it, and I was showing everybody. It's very exciting. So it brought back. Thank you for that, for sharing that story. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool. So remember, everyone, we need you to write in and let us know what science has done for you lately. This is actually our next to last one we have in the docket right now. So I need everyone, when you've been sitting on it and like, oh, I don't know if I should write it, now is the time. Write in. We don't want this segment to die. So please write into us. What has science done for you lately? And if you've written before, but science has done something new for you, let us know. Leave us a message on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/thisweekinscience. You can also email Dr. Kiki. That's Kirsten@thisweekinscience.com. And you can also, send us Twitter messages, whatever it is. We want to fill this segment. We want to see how long it can go. And I don't think it's ready. So,
well, and the other thing is too, if people aren't sending stuff in, we'll have to fill it.
Yeah.
And you've already heard how much I love dishwashers and right. And science has allowed me to do a show where I talk about science and create a segment where I say how thankful I am for science for
it's quite the snake eating its own tail. I like this because this is the moment where you, our TWIS listeners, have a moment in the spotlight. You get to hear, we get to hear from you, which is, I think, really powerful. So please write in. We'd like this segment to continue. And now on to the science news. Justin, give me some science.
Okay, so the feet of primates can also function as graspers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Had we kept this lost to evolution attribute, we may live in a world where keyboards are placed on the floor instead of upon a desk. Door handles might be much lower than they are now. Our spines could conceivably be less bendy, if not for the frequent need to bend over while picking things up off the floor. And hipster handshakes would be twice as time consuming and 4 times as unnecessarily redundant as they are now. So there's maybe some good reasons for losing the graspiness on our feet. But yeah, our adaptation to bipedal walking sort of rededicated our graspy feet to becoming just feet that became much more efficient at walking over time. It reduced our ability to do other things with them. Now, there's been some contention. When did this actually happen? An international team of researchers have concluded that adaptations for bipedal walking in primates occurred as early as 4.4 million years ago. And for a decent portion of that process, early hominin feet might have retained some of their graspiness. So there was this crossover time of being fully bipedal, but also being able to cut your mammoth steak with your toes, I guess. I don't know what we were eating back then.
I might enjoy that. That might be pretty fun.
Right? Yeah, so they basically took a lot of bone morphology in ancient hominins and looked at sort of the forefront portion. These are like the toes and the bones around the toes and that sort of thing, and looking for where and how they might be able to move. This is how they came to that 4.4 million year ago date. But I think it's a pretty fascinating. I just enjoyed this story just because my favorite one is the low door handle. Like that would be like walking along and just like, instead of like, you could be carrying something and still open a door.
I just
how
wonder
convenient would that
at
be?
what point it sounds rad to be able to pick things up with your feet. So
Type
at
with your
what
feet.
point
What?
at what point did the pro of losing that toe and I guess gaining grip or whatever it is outweigh the con of losing the ability to grab?
And so it says there was a crossover period in that 4.4 million year ago, but it seems as though, and I wish it said it here, and it might be deeper into this study than I can get right now. But I doubt that it lasted very long, right? Because once we can travel about, and the thing that I think about too really quickly is like all of the quadrupedal creatures on the earth who did have some sort of appendage at the end of a hoof before the hoof, and and mobility overrode the necessity for that. So whether it's running away from prey, chasing prey, just covering more ground
mobility,
to search for resources, like all of these things, the ability to travel seems that way. But nowadays, when we have cars, bicycles, when our need
We
to
could
rely,
use them again.
like, yeah, we could start going back. And then think, if you could type with your toes, think of all the other things you could do with your hands
Oh yeah.
at the same
man,
time.
that'd be great.
You could be typing while on the phone and sipping a
Yeah.
beverage all at the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
Right? We
That
could
sounds
be so
awesome.
more productive if we just started. And it's now, look, we're gonna have to start small. Right? This is not going to happen overnight. We need to get everyone involved, all of humanity, in doing toe agility and object manipulation with your feet activities.
Well,
on
will
a
that
daily
make an
basis.
epigenetic change? I don't know if that'll make an epigenetic change. You would have to do some selective breeding for people with the most thumb-like toes.
No, I think it would come naturally with increased productivity. Those people would become wealthier, therefore they could afford to have more offspring, and then the traits
If
would.
only that's how things actually work. Anyway, Justin, do you like to go to work when it's really hot out?
Okay. Yes, it's my favorite time.
Isn't it because it's air conditioned inside?
Because where I work is fully air conditioned. Yes.
So what if you worked outside? Like, I don't know,
Which
if
I
you
have for a
were
very long time. And
a policeman, let's say,
okay.
would you want to go to work if it was 100 degrees out?
Well, am I in the car? Or am I walking? Without giving somebody else's explanation, the car lot, which I worked at for, in the car business for years, you work on an asphalt surface, which then when it's 100 degrees outside, it's like an extra 10 degrees walking across a blacktop, right?
Yes.
Miserable. Yes.
So a piece of research from MIT and Harvard wanted to look at global warming and the impact on productivity. So we know that hot weather impacts thought processing, emotions, behavior, and they wanted to extrapolate this and look at what impact hot weather might have on, in particular, public servants, particularly those who have to work regardless of weather. So for this study, they focused on food inspectors and police officers and the people with whom they interact. The researchers looked at database information about food inspection activities and traffic statistics. For food inspectors, they looked at the number of food safety inspections that occurred and the number of food safety violations that were reported from 2001 to 2015. For police officers, they looked at the number of police stops made and the number of accidents that occurred across the US from 2002 to 2017. They looked at the data with weather data, and they looked at behavioral changes during periods of hot weather. What they found was, do you want to make any predictions?
My guess is people were less productive when it was hot outside.
Yeah. So more car accidents during hot weather, but fewer traffic stops. Fewer food inspections, but more food safety violations. So more car accidents and violations are indicative of the kind of the people working in these spaces, the drivers, those working in restaurants, they're less careful. But this also suggests that hot weather causes police officers and food inspectors to be less diligent. So this is a lot of extrapolation. This is a lot of correlation. This is not like, oh, as global warming happens, society will break down. But it is something to consider that people in general become less motivated to be diligent, and perhaps their brain does not work as well when weather is hotter.
So there's a study that's really old that I don't have, but I always remember it, which was finding a correlation between hot summers and when wars were started.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of that's water availability, right?
Well, maybe it could be, but the idea is, we're also talking about ancient times when, and not that ancient. Like, actually, you really don't have to go back much before.
Yeah.
Like
fully migrated into foot out of toe foot area.
No,
like
I'm talking like
area.
you just have to go pre-air conditioner.
Yeah,
really is all really that you have to do, and that really hot weather correlates with more willingness or more literally like hot-headedness. Like maybe the word hot-headed comes from it's a hot day and now people want to fight each other. Like, I don't know.
It's something to consider because, we do have now, with every year that we see is now the hottest ever, is as this trend continues, if we see heat waves happening in certain areas, this might be something that we should be keeping an eye out for and maybe doing something about. So, I don't know. It's an interesting piece of research. Again, not causative, just correlative, but there we are. Justin, do you have more stories?
I do have another story here. Let's see. Okay, this is one I don't know why I got sent this. People were sending me this story this week.
Oh, I sent it to you.
You sent it, but you weren't the only one. Somebody else liked it somewhere.
I thought it was really interesting. I thought that it was something that you might find interesting as well.
I didn't. I'm kidding.
Then why'd you bring it?
All right. So this is a study that says no sex differences in attitudes or abilities are needed to explain the near absence of women from the battlefield in ancient societies and throughout history. And it says it could ultimately all be down to chance, according to researchers at the University of St. Andrews. So they published this study in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B. And it's kind of interesting. So I guess the premise of this is that it may just be that at some point men, because we are transferred our sort of homogenous group competition for mates to the others and transfer that aggression to like the other tribe or other group when competing for resources. And the idea is because men were already sort of prone to being a little bit more aggressive with each other over mates or hierarchy within a group, that it was a natural transference, but that it could have just as easily been women. And they point to the fact that hyenas, it's really the women that get together and go fight other hyenas.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of how that society sort of coalesced. This is, let's see, Dr. Micheletti, Cody voice. Our study shows that these differences are not needed to explain why women generally don't go to war. That's the differences referring to physical size of men on average versus women. We found that the more one sex participates in warfare, the less the other sex is incentivized to do so. So over time, this leads to only one sex fighting in the battlefield. So the idea is,
all those dudes are going out and getting killed.
Yeah, all the fights
want me to go? I'm not gonna go.
Well, no, but why would you? Like, if it becomes specialized that one sex goes and does the fighting, why would the other sex? I kind of, I don't like. I don't know. I don't know that
I have one big problem
I
with
have a
this study.
couple-
Can I
I
tell
have
you
a
what it
couple
is?
Big problems. Go ahead.
My main problem with it is that women get pregnant.
Mm.
And I think that's really why. Because before contraceptives existed, women spent the majority of their adult life with child. So why would you send that to war?
Yeah.
It seems pretty simple to me. You don't want a bunch of pregnant women on the front lines. And for thousands of years, women were just pregnant always.
Yeah.
Like, we have this very long gestation, and you can get pregnant again like pretty quickly after having a baby. Then you're nursing. I just feel like you're carrying the following generation. You can't be out there.
Yeah. Totally.
It seems pretty clear.
Yeah. That absolutely makes sense. What's interesting though, they also point out that psychotic type violence disorders affect predominantly men. So the study also then suggests that this may originate from aggression that was supposed to be targeted at other groups, as in the participation of warfare, and that we are genetically. See, the thing is, what it says is, to me, men are genetically predisposed to go fight each other, and the psychotics, because of a gene mutation, will take it out on each other instead of the other. It's a lot to
There's a lot in that.
buy into that's
in
not
that paper,
actually
yeah.
there necessarily. Like I did like there. Okay, so there is this one part of this which is like when people are talking about, and I'm gonna get ever so slightly political, I guess. When people are talking about gun control versus gun rights and everything else, and it's always I've seen a lot of these NRA or gun rights proposals that look. I am a woman who is 105 pounds, and I need to be able to defend myself with a gun if some big man threatens me. And then I look at all the gun violence that happens in the news, and it's vastly, vastly, more than vastly, almost exclusively male gun violence. Which brings me to the conclusion, if the argument for having a gun is that single women need them, and the evidence against guns is that men keep killing people with guns, well, there we have it. We just allow women to have guns. And that solves it, right? Women, you can have whatever kind of semi-automatic,
But men
fully
can't.
automatic. Who cares? But men cannot have any guns.
Yeah.
I think that would be the solution. That would make
Sweetie,
both
can
sides.
I have the keys to the
No.
gun cabinet? No,
No.
you're not allowed. You
If
know
I-
the law.
If I lend you my gun, I'll lose my gun rights. There's no way it's happening, right? So, but and we've talked to like the Viking society. We find women fighting alongside, right? Their views of hierarchy, though, within society were different. And we've talked about in a few other examples of like the narrowing of the male chromosome, or these potential bottlenecks, and it was very male oriented, was patriarchal male societies that would go out, and brother with brother and cousin with cousin, all the men would go out and fight the other men of the hill people, and then they'd wipe each other out or diminish each other to some degree. And the women's gene pool wasn't really as affected by this because they weren't participating, but they were also male-dominated societies that these were taking place in. And so I think largely the reason men have been so associated with war throughout the ages is that's whoever is running these societies is the one that has the reason to fight for it. If you don't have any rights within your society, I'm not going to go die for this. I don't even have any rights I'm defending. I'm not allowed to own land. What land am I supposed to be defending? Your land? No, it's not even my land. I don't even have land. That could be like a big part of it. But ultimately, maybe just men aren't as wise about long-term thinking. That could just be it. Men aren't as good long-term thinkers.
Women are also out there making babies. Anyway, have you ever gotten the drunchies, Justin?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You know, it's like you have a few brewskis and you're like, let's go to In-N-Out, you know? The drunk munchies. Yeah.
I actually don't. I really don't. No.
So
this is a thing that I don't understand.
Right, but it's a thing that happens to many people, especially people on college campuses, which is what this study is all about. There's the drunchies, which are the drunk munchies. There's also this propensity to eat really fattening or greasy foods the morning after you drink to take care of a hangover. So researchers wanted to look at a sample of college students, a college of sample students. That's there we go. To better understand how drinking affects what they eat, both that night and the next morning. This is at University of Buffalo's School of Public Health and Health Professions. They looked at 286 students at a large public university in the Midwest. And they were asked to complete an anonymous online survey. So again, this is survey-based. So, you know, red flag, red flag. General questions about their diet. What do you typically eat for your first meal of the day? How often do you eat something before you go to bed? Then later on in the survey, they were asked how often they ate something before bed on nights where they drank alcohol, what they ate. They were also asked what they ate for their first meal the day after a night of binge drinking. So this involves self-reporting, which especially if you're really potentially ashamed of something that you ate while you were drinking or something like that, I don't know, it might affect it. But also they're college students, so maybe they don't have shame yet. We'll see. Anyway. Later in the survey, okay, so they were asked about what they ate after drinking and during drinking. So drinking influenced studies participants' dietary behaviors before going to bed. All alcohol drinkers were more likely to eat something before they went to bed after drinking alcohol, and they did not report as doing so when they didn't drink. They were more likely to opt for salty snacks like pizza, health foods like dark green vegetables, not something you reach for when you're drunk and heading to bed, turns out. The following day after drinking, participants' dietary patterns were varied, but they were less likely to skip meals, which I think is interesting, especially since another study I was reading this week had to do with the benefit of eating breakfast. So that's like a whole nother thing. But as their morning after meals, they favored foods like pizza or tacos because of this so-called quote unquote hangover cure that involves soaking up alcohol, which is a myth.
Okay, so but there's part of it that's
not
not
reported drinking less water while and after, which I think is very telling.
But the propensity for the thing that really makes sense here is they're ingesting foods high in sodium.
Right.
So if you are dehydrated, well, it might not seem completely intuitive, but if you're wandering through the desert with a half a canteen of water, the thing you want to ingest more than anything is salt. You want to take a big handful of salt and eat it, because what the salt will, high sodium content in your body will do is it will help you retain what moisture you have within your body, as opposed you're less likely to just sweat it out or what have you, right? So So it kind of makes sense if you're getting dehydrated that you would want to add salt. Your body would be telling you, give me some salt. If you're not giving me water, if you're going to dehydrate me, I need some salt so I can keep what I got.
But you also need water.
Well, there's plenty of water in beer, right? Like I mean, but
so the issue
it's
isn't
there.
the water,
It's
the
just
beer.
about retaining it.
The issue is, having water after the beer.
Right.
Because
so
after the effects are taking place, you
Yes.
need the water.
So you need to retain it, which is what sodium will do. Which it's not so much. I mean, the way to think of this is it's not that these students said, "Hey, I've had alcohol, therefore, because I heard that pizza and tacos and salty nuts are good for a hangover." It's just they have the craving, right? They get the craving for these things.
So that's one of the things they mention. The amount of blood glucose in the body can rise and fall during and after drinking, which stimulates the brain to feel hungry. So when you're feeling hungry, you're more likely to jump to the more kind of enticing foods. But the main point of this study, the reason that they did it, is they wanted to demonstrate a need for universities in particular to encourage healthy eating, including late at night, just all times of day, including late at night, mainly by, which good luck, reducing the offerings of unhealthy foods late at night and promoting nutrient dense options. But I do think dispelling myths is part of it. So this idea that you need to eat greasy food the morning after to soak up alcohol is something we have all heard, but it is not based in fact.
No. The facts
because
are that
the alcohol's already gone.
But the
is the
sodium
thing.
content of that greasy food will help you to some degree combat the dehydration. But you should still drink water.
Yes, but
Make
it's
that a
also that this idea that it makes you eat more than you normally would, but it also makes you reach for the less healthy option, which if you're trying to rebuild from a rough night, let's say, even though you might think soaking up the alcohol, quote unquote, is the most important thing, it's actually more important to reestablish your microbiota and to, give yourself the vitamins and nutrients that a body needs.
Yes.
That's really what's important.
Soaking up the alcohol is not how your physiology works. It's not what's good. Your stomach is not. That's not what's actually going on in there. But
And speaking of binge drinking, I have one more story about binge drinking. This one's about the very popular trend of mixing energy drinks with alcohol.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like a winning combination.
Yeah, it's very popular because the alcohol makes you sleepy. But if you drink it with a caffeinated beverage, then hey, you can stay up and drink longer. What could go wrong, right?
Everything.
Researchers
Everything could go wrong.
From the University of Portsmouth and the Federal University of Santa Maria in Brazil tested the effects of taurine, which is in most of those energy drinks, and alcohol on social and fear responses in zebrafish. They found, shock, that the taurine seemed to increase fear-reducing properties of alcohol while also affecting social communication. So there is a reduction of fear when you're intoxicated, which is what they found in these zebrafish. They divided them into shoals, and they were exposed to either water, taurine, and alcohol, or taurine and alcohol separately. The shoaling behaviors were analyzed at time intervals from 0 to 5 minutes, 30 to 35 minutes, and 55 to 60 minutes. And they were tested for fear-like responses to a predator. And they found that fish that were exposed to both alcohol and taurine had reduced fear response. So they showed more, quote unquote, risky behavior. They spent more time near a predator, but they also had fewer interactions with the fish in the shoal. So the alcohol reduces the inhibitions, makes them less afraid, increases the risky behavior. But the taurine, they think, exacerbated risky choices and reduced social coercion. So it makes you kind of less able to read a room, I would say.
Okay, so people, here's my advice. Dr. Justin's not a real doctor advice. Follow your cravings. If if you drink and you feel the need to consume salty foods, there's a reason. Follow the craving. If you drink and you get sleepy, it's your brain's way of telling you
Yes.
you're now making bad
You're
decisions.
done.
Your brain can know we are not in
Time to
control of what's going to happen next. Let's shut it down. That's your brain saying, turn it off, shut it down, go lie down. You know what? Yes, that person may have said something rude to you. Tomorrow, when you wake up, you'll be sober and they'll still be rude. But right now, we're not in control of the next few moments. Let's go to sleep. It's
Yes.
time.
Dr. Matt Parker, senior lecturer in behavioral pharmacology and molecular neuroscience at University of Portsmouth, says people should be aware that drinking energy drinks in combination with alcohol may impair their judgment and should do so with caution. So it took a PhD to figure that one out. But it's good to know that kind of this crazy erratic behavior that we see with a mixture of energy drinks and alcohol, it's for a reason, and we see it in zebrafish too. Pretty hilarious. My very last story, just a cute little feel-good story to send you off on your week, is about Mr. Stubbs. Mr. Stubbs is an American alligator that lost his tail. He was found in the back of a semi-truck loaded with other exotic animals in 2013, and he was brought to the Phoenix Herpetological Society to live there. He was fit with a prosthetic tail, so alligators use their tail for a lot of things, for moving through the water and for also defending themselves. And it was made from a cast of a similarly sized dead alligator's tail. But the latest research in 3D scanning and printing has allowed Justin Georgi, an associate professor of anatomy at Midwestern University in Glendale, Arizona, to try to replace the old, now kind of not large enough tail for Mr. Stubbs. They collaborated with a local company called Stax 3D. They used an Tech 3D scanner. They put those little balls all over Mr. Stubbs like you see movie stars do in a motion capture situation. They were able to see exactly how he used it, how he moved, and what size and shape it would need to be. And they were able to craft him a new prosthesis. He was fitted with it for about 5 weeks, and then they hit a really high water mark. It proved that it worked out well because he tail slapped a volunteer at the rescue facility. Georgie remembers, my initial reaction was, that's wonderful. Of course, I had to stop and ask if the volunteer was okay too. But hearing that he was using the tail in a natural fashion was just a terrific and exciting landmark. So as Mr. Stubbs continues to grow, they'll be able to scan him again, make a new one, but the process is easier, simpler, and more accurate, and it weighs more like it's supposed to weigh. It serves the function much better than anything they could have given him before. So this is the next in a long line of animals kind of streamlining this process for us before humans start getting all of these 3D printed prostheses.
Dr. Justin's a real doctor this time.
Oh, yeah?
Prosthetic tail. You too can swap away those pesky people in line with your new 3D printed
alligator tail. Yeah. So we had there's a penguin, I think, that lives at the Santa Barbara Zoo that has a 3D printed shoe or foot or something like that. There's an eagle that got a 3D printed beak. Now we have an alligator with a 3D printed tail, and they are hoping that this research and the developments here will help to develop some 3D printed prostheses for humans. It's pretty great.
It is.
Justin, do you have any more stories?
That's all I brought.
That's great. It's I think we had a nice full show. Definitely missed Kiki tonight, but I feel like we still brought some science to the masses. I hope everybody enjoyed it. We wanted to give shout outs here at the end of the show to all of our Patreon supporters. I do not have the list because Kiki has the list and the login information. You can pretend that I'm rattling off badly pronounced names right now, but we have a huge amount of dedicated Patreon supporters, and just know that we know you're there, we care about you, and this is your proxy shout out this week. If you're interested in supporting us through the Patreon program or just through PayPal, you can find information at twis.org, at patreon.com/thisweekinscience, and you can also just help us by telling your friends about TWIS. On next week's show, we will be back broadcasting live at 8 p.m. Pacific time on twis.org/live. Kiki will be here back at the helm, and you can watch and join us in our chat room. If you can't make it live, that's totally fine. You'll find all of our past episodes at youtube.com/thisweekinscience, and you will find all of the audio at twis.org and all of the other podcasty things.
Yes. Thank you for enjoying the show. TWIS is also available as a podcast. Just Google This Week in Science in the iTunes directory. Or if you have one of those mobile type of devices, you can look for TWIS, the number 4, Droid app in the Android marketplace, or simply This Week in Science in anything Apple Marketplacey.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, for example, if you want to see a picture of Mr. Stubbs, show notes will be available on our website. That's at www.twis.org, where you can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts and other listeners.
Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twisminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twis.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes to you in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer, and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just get understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. Jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma. Got the eye. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness, I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. But how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This week in science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say. And if you learned anything from the words that we said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.
There we go. That's our show. Just looking in the YouTube chat room. I had so many windows open. I couldn't do this as well. Too many things. It's looking like... Oh, yeah. When we were talking about Wi-Fi, I thought I was asking about what do they do for people who fear electromagnetic waves, who don't want to be Wi-Fi'd. If they don't want to be Wi-Fi'd, I think they have to go live in some caves somewhere. I don't... They feel like there's Wi-Fi everywhere. Yeah, so funny.
What happened to... Is this the after show?
Yeah, it's the after show.
Is it now?
Oh my goodness. I'm looking through our YouTube comments right now. Looks like everyone had a fun time.
Oh, good.
Ooh, Elijah wants to know how seahorses settle conflicts. Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh. I don't know. I don't know very much about seahorses.
Oh, Justin should come out with a new line of salt licks. That's great. Oh my gosh. Alcoholic hard kombucha. Isn't all kombucha hard, Fada?
No. Kombucha is a fungus, a highly acidic fungus.
But isn't that the one that you have to be 21 to buy because it's technically alcoholic?
No, it's
thought
not
that was
alcoholic.
it, right?
It's not alcoholic at all. No.
What am I thinking of?
No, kombucha, I don't know, but kombucha is some people have reported.
Oh yeah, kombucha's alcoholic. You have to be 21 to buy it. I was right.
Really?
It's about 2% alcohol. Yeah.
Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah, it's funny that the thing about soaking up alcohol is definitely something I heard in college too. They were like, "Oh yeah, you got to get French fries, got to get like, extra sided toast at breakfast, like
Right,
got to soak up the alcohol." You're like, "It's
talking,
gone."
We're talking French fries. We're talking greasy food. We're talking
Yeah.
What's doing it is the salt content. This is what your body is telling you that you need to restore balance. Basically, though, if you drink a thing of Pedialyte, you'd be fine. You'd be good. You have your electrolytes. You rehydrated. This is the thing. It's about your body wanting to rehydrate. That's what it is.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh yes, Fada was saying that there's actually a thing called hard kombucha that like has alcohol added into it. That's pretty hilarious. It's like, I'd like some alcoholic yogurt, please.
Ooh, that sounds good. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Anything you want to talk about in the after show, Justin?
I'm good.
Okay. Well, somebody asked in the chat room if there are any animals at the zoo with prostheses. And I think there's not any at my zoo currently. I know that there was a crow who was missing a foot, and we tried to give him a prosthesis, but he kept ripping it off. He's doing fine. He's doing fine with one foot. He doesn't need it. Yeah. So that's all I know about at my zoo. Yeah. I think I don't know. I don't really have any new business.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I'm rant free unless
You're rant free.
unless the Freenode web IRC chat room has something a subject they would wish me to rant upon.
Ooh. Someone asked me an animal question I can actually answer in the YouTube chat. Elijah Moon wants to know how much of a steak is considered the tail. Aha!
Oh,
does it really answer?
yeah,
Really
it's
easy
all
answer.
tail.
It's
No,
all below the cloaca. So you find the vent, which is where pee, poo, and reproductive organs all have access, and everything below that is the tail, because it's all about the vertebrae. So the vertebrae are all back vertebrae until then, and then it's tail vertebrae after that.
Interesting.
There you go. Thought you were asking a cheeky question potentially, but it's one with a real answer. So on snakes, it's actually not much of the body at all. So for example, on like a 3-foot king snake, I would say, probably like this much of it is the tail.
Wow. So
So
snakes have short tails. Who knew?
yeah, they don't have very long tails, and they have one long, skinny lung and one vestigial lung that's like all shriveled and doesn't really do anything. Yeah, that's how they fit it all in there.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Oh, Ed, thank you. Yes, I'm very excited about the calendar. I'm making strides. So I have what apply to fish and eels? Oh, what part of it's the tail? Yeah, it'd be the same. Yeah, the calendar's it's far away. I can't reach it right now. So I have 6 drawings complete and 3 of them are colored. So I am moving swiftly towards it being ready.
I heard an interesting story about the on the history of the color blindness glasses, the chromo
Oh, and chroma?
And chroma. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it turned out to be this is a great example of accidental discovery.
Oh yeah, I know this story. I can't wait to hear it again though. Tell me.
Okay. So the gentleman who created it is a glass chemist, and he was working with these surgeons who needed this laser, but the laser that they were using to perform the surgery with, terrible for the eyes. So they needed to be able to block it. And they found that the spectrum that was really good at blocking this laser's ability to affect their eyes was this orange glass filter. So they'd wear it like a mask. The only problem is they couldn't really see any colors. Everything turned orange, and it was really annoying. But it also turned out that it worked very well as sunglasses. And he's out with a friend, and I think that story was they're playing frisbee golf, and his friend was trying to make a throw into the sun, so borrowed his sunglasses, and then for the first time saw all of the orange pylons that were out, sort of marking the barriers of this frisbee golf field. I guess this friend was colorblind, but then could see all of a sudden orange, because it was allowing his eye to see orange with this filter. So he thought that was really interesting, and then went through and over many trial and error and time found that he could get other colors to appear, but it wasn't relieving color blindness. What it was doing was allowing somebody to see red or just green, or just blue, or just orange, or just, and a lot more work, time, and effort. I think this was a project that was over something like 15 years. Came up with something that could allow all colors to have a degree of reliable presentation, right? And nobody bought it. They had this great thing, and they put it out there, and people were like, "Eh." And it was somebody like who worked with them, or somebody in the office or something, who came up with the idea of shipping it off with a assortment of different colored balloons. And that's the commercial that everybody's been seeing, is people getting wowed by, like, somebody will blow up like a yellow balloon. It's like, oh, I can see yellow. And somebody else will blow them up the purple balloon. It's like, oh, that's what purple is. I had no idea. So it's pretty fascinating. Sorry, but it all started with a researcher who was working on a way to protect eyes from a laser that could potentially be damaging the eyesight of surgeons. And then a frisbee golf casual request to borrow somebody's sunglasses that led to the idea. It's pretty fantastic.
The thing about it that I wonder is, if I ended up with them, do I then have to go out every day being like, is this a day I want to see color?
So you know what's awesome about that? Because that's fantastic. So if you're in like kind of a dreary mood, and you're like, I want it all painted shades of gray, I don't want to see color, you can actually just fulfill that. You can go out and the world will match how you feel.
But see, this is like the only thing where if you need corrective lenses, you're not like, today I'm gonna wear my glasses. Right. But this is the thing where it's not something that you can keep, especially since they're sunglasses, right? So you have to, and because they're pretty expensive. I wouldn't use them every single day because they're like $400. Like,
but that's
so the question is, do you are those just your sunglasses now?
Okay.
But then also now you know what you're missing when you're not wearing them, which is like this deep-seated fear I have that I'll never want to go outside without them anymore because I'll know what I'm missing.
Blair, offer me $400 to lose my ability to see color.
I feel like you're not going to take it.
Go ahead and offer it.
Hey, $400. I'm going to take your color vision.
Go to hell. No way. No. Like, this is the most ridiculous offer anybody could ever make. It's just not ever worth it. Yeah. And it's completely taken for granted. Like, you have the ability to smell or tell the temperature of something when you pick it up. These are things you take for granted. If somebody offered you $400 right now, not to be able to tell whether something was hot or cold, would you do it? Would you do it?
No, absolutely not.
Of course not. That's the most.
That being said, just the other day, I watched something for 5 minutes before I turned to somebody and went, is this in black and white? Okay. They were like, yeah, it's like sepia. I was like, oh, okay. That adds some context to what I'm looking at. Cool. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I can't wear sunglasses while I watch TV.
You might be able to. I don't know. Just turn the brightness up a little bit.
Yeah, enjoy everyone else I'm watching TV with.
well, yeah. So this. I mean, okay. You're looking for reasons to shoot it down, and I understand why. You've been on the planet decent amount of time, and you like yourself. You want to feel like you've already experienced all that life has to offer. But what if there's more? What if you have, that's like a superpower. You're already in the world. You're already living your life. Everything's already great. And then there's this next thing that you get to add to it. Oh my God, you are like the luckiest person in the world. The rest of us have no idea. If somebody came to me and said, hey, Justin, would you pay $400 to be able to see into the UV spectrum? Absolutely. Give me additional just if for $400, if you could see through backpacks and tell if somebody had a barrel-shaped object in their backpack, would you absolutely give me the superpower? You have the ability to purchase a superpower add-on to your existence, and you're like, but I might not be able to see through lead, so why even bother? No, it's a necessity. It's a necessity as a superpower, as an add-on. Don't think of it as the thing that's like, I don't even know how you're thinking of this. Like as a thing that's going to cause you angst. This is ridiculous. For $400, if you could fly, would you pay the $400 if you could just have the ability to fly all of a sudden? If you had the ability to read any document in any language that it's written, would you pay $400? Oh my gosh, that was
I would do that for sure.
totally worth it, right? This is that. This is that.
I haven't done it yet. So.
You haven't done it, but I don't think you should. I don't think you should. I think that the show should do it. And I think no, and I mean this seriously. Like I think the show should do it. Much as the way that I've proposed, like we also spend show funds on getting your ancestral DNA history.
Right.
Because it also is something that we can use on the show, and ability to share with people somebody's experience through science on something like the first time looking over a genetic history, or the first time, like the deal would have to be like, you cannot put them on until we're doing a show.
Right.
Like, you have to be like, there's some stick to this. But then that we would get an update once you get to go out into the daylight, maybe. I don't know. Right.
Yeah.
But
we'd have to do a special hangout or something. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, I think it's I think it's worth, because we don't, like if okay, so the story that I heard that told this backstory, one of the presenters on the show happened to be colorblind, but apparently the show was too cheap, didn't buy them the glasses, and there was no like, but they were saying like, well, I don't know if $400 is worth seeing purple, like the same sort of thing, right? But like they didn't have like the other part of the story where they got to say like, I've been colorblind and making art and making these kind of, and I've like and share that with an audience live. I think it'd be incredible. I think that's absolutely a good use of the funds that the Patreons have put forward, is allowing Blair to see color. And if I were to ask the chat room, which is often full of Patreons, chat room, do you
Patreons?
Yeah, they often are. Like much of our chat room is patrons to the show. Does the chat room think that a good use of TWIS funds would be getting Blair what are they called? Enchroma,
yeah.
Enchroma color seeing eyeglass thingies? Yeah, well, they're silent, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not.
Nope.
Oh no, wait, here we go. Yeah, let's do some interactive science. Okay, there's one. Identity 4. I wouldn't mind donations being used for that. Oh, Hot Rod does point out we wouldn't be able to see Blair's beautiful eyes. Identity 4, yes, absolutely with it. Hot Rod doesn't do Patreon, but PayPal. That's fine. It doesn't. Just if you're there, it doesn't matter. You're still there. Flying Out is sending extra money right now just for this cause. Noodles also says yes. Yeah, I think the minions have spoken.
Yeah, well,
there's definitely support for this. So we'll have to because I
we
guarantee
can talk about it next week.
We will, but I guarantee you, Kiki, if she has previewed the show, she hasn't listened this deep to the after show. So
no.
So minions, I need all of you. This is a terrible thing I'm doing.
Yikes.
Hot Rod will also donate extra for this cause. Ed would also vote for this. Minions, I need all of you, and as a collective effort, to reach out to our show via Kirsten at
Facebook and Twitter. No. Do at TWIS Science. Do Twitter.
Do Twitter. Do the Facebook. Post links to Enchroma, and tell those chat areas, those social medias, how much you would love to see Blair wear those glasses live on the air. We can make this happen. We're still. I feel like this is like. I was like, we still have 0 out of 1 people who we need to take care of here on the board. Come on, I need everybody to pitch in. We got 1 person that we need to.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got all the heavies in the
Oh,
chat.
hashtag colors for Blair. You guys are gonna
that's
make me
fantastic.
cry.
That is fantastic.
That's very sweet. You guys are also sweet.
So yes,
I feel like I can't advocate for it because I'm like, hey, TWIS, buy me things. Thanks. Like,
I think you can. I mean, and I agree with it too. Like if it's something, because this is part of our show is your color blindness comes up quite a bit.
It does.
It's not part of the show, right? This is part of what comes up quite a bit when we talk about these things. And the fact that I mean, hey, if we get nothing else but a Blair's What Has Science Done For Me Lately segment, it's totally worth it.
Yeah, I took the test a while back on their website, and it said it was it had the highest Enchroma. So they can either tell you like, no, these won't work, or they might work, or they're likely to work. Those are the 3 options. And so I did get these are likely to work option. But if they don't work, you can send them back for a full refund. Which I do feel like that would be the greatest letdown of my life, which is also what's kind of terrifying, is I'm terrified they'll come, I'll put them on, and I'll go, everything looks the same.
You're not worthy. You're not. No. Well, yeah, but this is well, that's sort of interesting. So yeah, I remember hearing this, that there's certain types of color blindness for which these glasses are not effective.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the implications of that are, but that might be useful in the future, knowing that you are of this subset of yada yada. I mean,
so I'm definitely the type of colorblind. I think it's deuterotone. I don't remember what it is, but it's where you're missing some red and some green cone, which is the one where it's likely to work.
I think it would be even funnier if it ended that you're not colorblind.
Yeah.
You're working, you're like, I don't see any difference. What is everybody going on again? Yeah, that's yellow and that's green and that's blue. That was it? That's all? Just color? Oh, come on. I thought there was like a next level to color that I was missing out on. But it turns out there's colors all this time. Oh, that's just boring.
That's definitely not happening. I can attest.
Yeah. No, my favorite, and I shared it with the kids who pointed out on the rare occasion that we're walking somewhere that has a crossing thing. The story about, so in case anybody doesn't know, Blair assumed the little pedestrian in the crosswalk sign, the don't walk to the little pedestrian, that the pedestrian was green.
Green, of course.
Because
green means go.
Right. Yeah. And it was somebody saying that they had found out that you were watching somebody else's attestment.
Yes,
that they were colorblind is when they found out that the pedestrian was white and not green, and you went, what?
Yeah, I was like, what the? I think I opened a new tab and I Googled like, what color is the man on the? Because I didn't believe it. I was like, maybe it's a regional thing. Like, I don't know. It's all the time. The thing that is most commonplace for me is that I will buy a piece of clothing, or I will be gifted a piece of clothing, and I will wear it I don't know, I think recently it happened to me with something I've owned for probably 5 years. And one day I was like, oh, I think I'm going to wear that blue top or whatever it is. And they were like, somebody I was talking to, they were like, what blue top? And I like pull it out. I'm like, this blue top. And I always get this like pitied look. I just get somebody go, that's black. Or like, that's green. And so that's why I usually take somebody with me when I go shopping, and I have a pretty good memory for that. Like I'll remember that this shirt that's made out of this fabric that has this pattern is green because somebody told me it was green. But I've definitely, you know, the really particular one was when I in college, it was my freshman year, so I was like out on my own, shopping on my own, doing everything on my own. And I walk out of my room to go to a St. Patrick's Day dance. And my roommates were like, come on, we got to go. Get ready. Go get ready. I can't believe you're not ready yet. And I was like,
you're thinking you're head to toe in green. You're like,
I'm
I'm a freaking leprechaun right here.
I'm
What are
ready
you
to
doing?
go. And they were like, you're not going to wear green to the St. Patrick's Day dance? Huh?
Oh no.
Yeah, I think I was wearing turquoise. Or like a Tiffany blue, like a I don't know what you would call that. I don't know. Not green.
How would you know? Sorry.
How would I know? How would I know? How would I know? So there you go.
Also, what's funny is that like you went from turquoise to a Tiffany, but like you probably know the names of more colors than most people like do because
Yeah.
like we're
Yeah, because I have to like study. I have to like I have to try to figure out what's what. Yeah, like I'll for a while I was doing at the Aquarium of the Bay. I had a boss that had me do bi-weekly like updates on all of my ongoing projects, and you had to highlight all of the changes, all the updates in progress in a color, and she wanted you to change the color every week so that they didn't blend together or whatever. And so I started as a like experiment in learning about colors. I started learning all these funny obscure colors, and I would go to their Wikipedia page and learn what makes them different from other colors. This is just, here we are.
Wow.
So phlox was a color that I learned that I absolutely loved, which is something I've noticed. I really like bright, like hyper colors, and it's probably because I can see them.
Okay. Yeah.
So phlox is this almost explosively kind of fuchsia-y color that's maybe a little more it has a little more blue mixed into it. It's not as pink. I don't know. But it's very, very, very bright. And so I really like that color. Yeah. I don't know.
So I'm excited. Minions, marching orders. Let's hit up the show's social media with links to Enchroma.
Kiki's gonna be like, what happened? What is going on here?
It's overdue, I think.
Ooh, let's look at this version of phlox. Ooh, yeah. I love it.
Oh wait, I gotta Google fly. How do you spell this?
But would you PHLOX? But Identity4 put a link in the chat room actually. But what would you call that? Pink or purple?
I'm aiding it right now. So I'm getting a flower of many different colors.
Yeah, use the link that Identity4 put in the chat room.
Aha. Well, I'm still getting different versions, but okay, let me go to the link that's there. It's definitely in the pink purple range.
Pink purple. That's what I would call it. Pink
Yeah.
purple. I thought magenta was darker. Whoever said magenta. Magenta, identical. Yeah, yeah, I think magenta is much darker.
It's definitely redder, magenta. Yeah, I'd call if I was just to call it, I would just have called that purple. Maybe a light purple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, before we go, does anyone want to watch me take the test? Since somebody linked to it. Here. I'm going to take the... This is the N-chroma color blindness test. Okay. See an image composed of small dots. Nobody tell me! Okay. Look for a number that is hidden in the pattern of dots. Okay, great.
Wait. Where's the test? Where's the
Start.
test? Oh, start test now. Hang on. I'm going to take it too.
Okay. 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 Already. Oh boy. Yikers. Let's see.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh.
You're guessing. Oh, that one's rough. That one's even rough if you're... Oh, I think there's a number there. I don't even know. Maybe I'm a little colorblind. Holy smokes.
Oh my.
Some of these are ridiculously easy.
To you, perhaps. Oh, yikes. I think it's that.
Oh my gosh. That one's hard even for me.
There's nothing on that one.
Are you sure?
No.
Look again. How many questions are there? My gosh.
30, I think.
Okay, this one I can make a number. I can make every number out of it, but I don't think there's anything there.
That last one looked like it was a question mark to me. Like it was a symbol, not a letter.
It's probably the number. This one is messing with me because it looks like they put something there and I can't
Mild
see it.
protan. Red-green color blindness, where the red cones in the eye do not detect enough red light, but instead respond more to green light. As a result, many colors such as green, yellow, orange, red, brown are confusingly similar.
I can't see this one. I want to go back and say unsure instead of, oh wow.
Oh, nice. Yeah. It'll work, they said. I think it actually it's more specific than it was before. Last time it was like, yeah, it should work. Okay.
Ooh. So it says, okay, so it says I have normal color vision.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Totally annoying. But it does say when people with normal color vision wearing chroma glasses, they see a color boost effect. Colors appear to pop with.
I can't just have this. Is that what you're telling me?
This
effect I can't just have this experience.
Power glasses also help people.
I wonder if this is like the placebo effect, though. They're trying to make more money to keep their company afloat. So they're like, yeah, you'll see better. And then you put them on, you're like, yeah, I totally see better.
Oh my god. Oh, so it kind of gives an example here from normal color vision versus proto anomaly. And at least the version that they're handing me this, red looks brown, orange kind of looks like yellow, green and yellow both look blue. Although green looks like a darker blue than the yellow, but that's interesting. Huh.
Oh yeah, this does say 80% of people have improved color vision.
Well, that can be fun.
Yeah.
But I don't need it. And it wouldn't be very interesting to have me on the show. Oh, look, blue is looking bluer than it ever did. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'll be able to see traffic lights. No, I usually can. There are some traffic lights where the greens look very white, but luckily, that's why in the United States, they're always the same order.
Magenta. People are now arguing about magenta. I think magenta is not just bright. Well, I'm also used to magenta as something that would show up in a video thing, but I feel like it's way redder than a purple.
Yeah, I thought it was like darker and redder.
I passed my test with flying colors. Thanks, Hot Rod. Or you passed.
All right.
Maybe. Oh, he took it too.
What do you think? Is it time to put a button on this week's
Say goodnight, Blair.
Science Capades? Good night, Blair. Say goodnight, Justin.
Good night, Justin.
Good night, Kiki,
Good night,
wherever
Kiki.
you are.
Wherever. She went to bed a long time ago.
Okay, thanks everybody for
Night,
listening
minions.
today. We'll see you next week.